So I guess I should welcome everybody and also note that this meeting is being held in person and electronically in accordance with the Municipal Act. Before we go to the consent agenda, I would like to provide an update that the Barrie Police Service has also provided to the public to make sure that residents are aware, obviously, of what happened this morning. But before I go into any of the detail provided by the Barrie Police Service, I wanted to thank our Barrie Professional Firefighters Association and our fire department for their reaction and action to not only deal with what was at the scene in terms of an immediate threat, but also recognize what could be an even greater threat that turned out to actually be a greater threat. And beyond that, obviously the Barrie Police Service has done a considerable amount of work today, and thankfully, as far as we know, everyone is safe. And the OPP, who've also been on scene, helping out with the I am going to forget the name of the tactical team, but there is a name for this tactical team that travels around the province in instances where there are explosives present. And so to all of those services, including our paramedics as well, thank you for the work that you did all night. Thank you for the work that you did all day, ensuring that any leftover remnants or bomb explosive materials were dealt with in a safe manner. So this is from one of our police inspectors, that this morning at 2:56, members of the Barrie Police Service and Barrie Fire and Emergency Services responded to a report of an explosion involving a parked motor vehicle at 108 Ann Street. Upon arrival, the involved motor vehicle that was parked in an outdoor parking lot was located a short distance away, and an unexploded improvised explosive device was also found adjacent. An evacuation order was given, and all of our city transit buses were routed around. Perimeter was established, and throughout the day that perimeter was enforced while all of the different parts of the investigation were dealt with. I think that there's lots more that we can pass on, and I know the police already have, but obviously this is an ongoing investigation, and over the coming weeks and months, I hope we are able to get to the bottom of what occurred, but that we believe at this point that it was an isolated occurrence, and the rest of the city, I think, can move around as they would on any other day. I'll now go to the consent agenda. So the first items to be held would be the report of the report of the Heritage Barrie Committee, dated June 27, 2023. Be referred to the Mayor's Priority and Planning Task Force. That's approved on consent. AC2, Municipal Heritage Register, 96 Clapperton Street. That's approved on consent. AC3, 2024 Doors Open Event Marketing and Communication. That's approved on consent. I'll go back to 5.1, which I missed before going to the motions. The reports of the Affordability Committee dated September 13th, 2023. That report of the Affordability Committee dated the 13th of September 2023 is to be received. Sorry? Yes, I had missed the opening part of that, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Yeah. We'll now move on to the report of the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee dated September 20th, 2023. The report of the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee is to be received. Councillor Hamilton, can you provide a summary of the meeting?
Yes, happy to. And through you, Mayor Nuttall. So the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee did meet on September 20th. A number of key items were discussed and are being brought forward tonight for consideration, as you will see. Firstly, we reviewed the deferred motion based on the Waterfront Strategic Plan update. You will see there are a number of amendments that were brought forward, largely to do with enhancing the tree canopy along the waterfront, including to planting 1,000 trees along the waterfront over the next 10 years. Also partnership with the Rotary Club of Barrie Huronia to look at planting of native trees. And finally, another amendment to do with the Waterfront Strategic Plan was for staff to look at consulting with First Nations and Indigenous people to designate a portion of land east of the historical Allendale train station to honor Indigenous traditions and provide space for gatherings. The second part of the conversation that evening centered around the Sea Cadets facility relocation options and youth sport consultation. The discussion focused on giving staff direction to develop a plan in consultation with the Sea Cadets and the Navy League of Canada to relocate the Navy Cadets to a new building east of Military Heritage Park. And finally, the third item that was discussed and being brought forward tonight, again as a recommendation, had to do with the landfill bike diversion pilot program, and that the city look at partnering with non-for-profit organization within the city of Barrie and explore opportunities to divert items included but not just limited to bicycles based on the pilot program that was launched previously. And I think that covers the three key areas that were identified or discussed at that meeting.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. I'll now go to the holds, the ICI 1, which is the deferred motion.
Hold, please.
That's been held by Councillor Rietma. ICI 2. That's approved on consent. ICI 3.
Separate report on ICI 2.
Sorry, on which one?
Separate report on ICI 2.
ICI 2, there's a separate report requested. Madam Clerk, is that noted?
Yes, Mayor Nuttall.
ICI 3. That's approved on consent. To those who are here for the Sea Cadets, that's been approved on consent and will proceed to City Council next week for ratification and debate. So thank you for being here with us again tonight. It's like every week now we get to see each other at City Council. I'll now move on to staff reports. DEV 003-23, parking control for new subdivisions.
Hold.
That's held by Councillor Morales. DEV 044, municipal street naming for streets in Ballymore draft plan of subdivision.
Hold, please.
That's held by by Deputy Mayor Thompson. I apologize, sir. DEV 046-23, Somerset Drive and Wright Drive, no parking and stopping prohibited. That's approved on consent. DEV 047-23, no parking anytime, Mapleton Avenue, Ward 6. That's approved on consent. DEV 049-23, Grove and Duckworth Streets, separated cycling facility implementation, Wards 1 and 2. It's approved on consent.
Hold. I'll hold it. Sorry, I was just waiting if the ward councillor was going to hold it. Or my apologies, it's 2 wards. But.
It's held by Councillor Morales. DEV 050-23, Geddes Crescent, no parking, anytime restrictions, Ward 4.
Hold, please.
That's held by Councillor Corser. DEV 051-23, municipal names, registry, additional names. That's approved on consent. DEV 052-23, community infrastructure and housing accelerator, order for Schlegal Villages, 800 Yonge Street, Ward 9.
Hold. Hold.
It's held by Councillor Morales. EMT 004-23, business plan status of June 30th, 2023. That's approved on consent. Confidential proposed disposition of land matter, Bayview Drive. That's approved on consent. It's a really good point, Madam Clerk. You are on it. Can I have somebody hold LGL 003-23 if I don't make the amendment tonight?
I'll hold.
Yeah, thank you so much. We would have to go into committee of the whole next week, which I think would be more difficult. So thank you. Appreciate that, Councillor Kringle. We will now go to the first order of business that was held. If you just give me one moment, I'll flip there. And that is ICI 1 deferred from previous. And Councillor Riepma, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll put the item on the floor as printed. I have one very minor amendment, excuse me, and that is to 1A. The funding is noted there to be from the tax capital reserve. And the amendment would take those words out and change it to the ecological tax offsetting reserve, because we have that reserve now, and it is specifically used for trees and tree planting. So it makes more sense to have it from that reserve. So that's my amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Are there any other questions or comments with regards to the amendment on the floor to the main motion? Councillor Kungl, sorry.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Riepma, in case you have this information, or I'll move it to staff. I'm not opposed to that change, knowing that it's a new ecological reserve and there are dollars coming into it. Is there certainty that for those 1,000 trees that there is enough funds in that reserve that will support the related item?
I think staff is probably best to answer that, but I would expect that there will be over the years, because this directs the planting of trees over 10 years. So it seems to me that there's likely to be enough funding, but maybe Mr. Miller can set your heart at rest on that.
Well, my heart beats. Beats for trees. If I may then redirect my question to Mr. Miller, would it be prudent to actually leave reference to the tax capital reserve and or ecological tax offsetting reserve? Or is the amendment to just using funding out of the ecological tax offsetting reserve going to have a sufficient funding not to delay the program or the planting of those 1,000 trees?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungl. So I've got Mr. Arian Sundram beside me, and I've confirmed with him. So we did receive funds this year, and the funds at this point are in the ecological reserve are uncommitted. So he was comfortable that he didn't foresee there was any commitments coming up against that reserve in the near future. So for that reason, it makes sense to proceed with this motion.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that there was a threshold where we didn't have to come back and ask for another reserve rather than just adding it to the existing referenced one. So I'm happy to support that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kungl. Any other questions or comments with regards to the amendment on the floor? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if you saw me or not. Yeah, just a quick question since we were just on trees. Just curious if we can get some clarification. Are we talking about mature trees being planted, or are we talking about smaller saplings? And also, too, is there any thought process around partnering with the local community groups like Living Greenberry when it comes to doing this? Because it may lower the cost extremely, I would suspect.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Hamilton, would you like to answer, or would you like me to answer this? It's up to you. Okay, sure. So the Rotary Club is involved in part of this already. I believe Living Green is somebody that I both spoke to at their gala about this, as well as other interactions, and so they're very interested in being part of it as well. And the other piece is we've also included the Royal Canadian Air Force in a piece of this as well. So there'll be a broad spectrum of user groups and stakeholders that will be involved. And I think that we also made an amendment that would ask that our, is it Communities in Bloom?
Yes, this month we've invited Councillor Riepma in October, to the Communities in Bloom meeting to share information on this.
So also our own Communities in Bloom Committee as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. I do have another question, but it's not related to this, so I'll wait for the vote on the amendment before I ask my my other question.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries. Councillor Harvey, you requested the floor, so I'll give it right back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'm not sure if maybe yourself or if this should go to staff. Just looking for a little bit of clarification. Obviously, as the chair of finance, I look at everything through a lens of dollars. And the piece that I'm looking at here is the Waterfront Master Plan and its inclusion into the 2024 to 2023 capital plan. I just don't want to see us doing what I would say a bit of piecemealing when you consider that we've got so many other capital things that are either partially in the works that maybe haven't come forward yet with direction to staff, or other things that have had small amounts of money put forward for consulting to be conducted. And those things that I'm talking about are like the market, the theater, the possible Sadlin expansion. Obviously, we know that there's going to be a significant ask coming forward from a capital piece from RVH. We've had some light discussions about splash pads, and that came back from residents back in 2019 about one in the Hawley area. And I don't know if now's the time to have this discussion or if this is more of a budget time, but I think, like, obviously there's only a certain amount of money to go around to be able to fund these capital projects, and I'm not quite confident that we can do them all. And I just don't want to see where, like, I mean, you're getting different projects competing against one another, and like, I mean, obviously there's different price tags attached to each of them. So just looking for some clarity as to whether this is something that needs to go to the Infrastructure Committee for a more fulsome discussion about the priorities of this council, or is this something that we hammer out at budget time?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I'll jump on that answer. So I think that a number of these items, as we just said, are from the ecological offsetting versus the capital reserve. And I think you're speaking directly to the capital reserve related items throughout the master plan. Master plans are, as they are said to be in their name, plans, but all of that's going to go forward to be debated on as part of our capital plan each and every year. And I know that our public servants are already going through the capital plan, already going through the preparing for the 2024 budget. And inevitably that will come forward through Finance Committee to General Committee and City Council. So I think that the appropriate times to have the debates on what's in and out would be after staff make their recommendations, and then we can make amendments to it at that point. Does that make sense, Councillor Harvey?
Most definitely. Yeah, it was just all about timing to get some clarity as to the best time to have those discussions. I just don't want to see where one year where we've got something in and then all of a sudden some other surprise might come up, and then all of a sudden it's possibly out or being delayed, and then obviously you're dealing with rising costs as you delay projects. But I will leave that to budget time, and we can sort it all out then. Thank you.
Thank you. It'd be really nice if we could get the ecological offsetting to buy money trees, and then it would make everything a whole lot easier. Are they? Okay, well, there you go. So don't take that literally there, Councillor. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an amendment. And it is to that paragraph 1B be amended by deleting the entire paragraph and replacing it with the following. That Staff and Operations and Development Services Department be directed to consult with the representatives from the Royal Canadian Air Force, Canadian Armed Forces, interested community groups to develop a plan to design and construct a feature to recognize the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force prior to June 1st, 2024, and report back to General Committee with the recommendations, locations within or near to Military Heritage Park, and the details of the project scope, capital cost, and cost-sharing agreement between the City, Trees for Life, and the Royal Canadian Air Force prior to the end of January 2024.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, and your amendments on the floor. Are there any questions or comments? May I speak this? This has come through from our Parks Planning staff asking for a little bit more scope on and meat on the bones on the actual motion to be able to get it back to us on time, to have it done on time. I believe, Councillor Morales, you have a question or a concern?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nettle. To whoever knows the answer, Deputy Mayor Thompson, did you say delete paragraph 1, like the entire thing? 1B?
1B.
Okay, I thought you just deleted the one. Okay, perfect. No questions.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just one quick question through you to Deputy Mayor Thompson. Just wondered about, this is really great, by the way, just wondered about the, after, from the Royal Canadian Air Force, Canadian Armed Forces, and interested community groups. It's fairly broad catch-all, and interested community groups seems fairly broad. Is that necessary, or is that just trying to be comprehensive and inclusive?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall. So the interested groups would be the Legion, the Air, Army Navy Club, Veterans Club. Those.
Great, thank you. Makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment for 1B. All those in favor? And it carries. We'll now ask if there's any other comments or questions on the main motion. I'm not seeing any, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And it carries. Just to pass on to the residents of Ward 4 and 5, they're now currently clearing the scene, and the roads will be opened immediately after all of our police, fire, and paramedics have left the scene, but that'll be happening in the next few minutes here. I'll now move on to DEV 003-23, parking control for new subdivision, secondary plan and built boundary. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nettle. The questions to staff. It says here that parking will be essentially controlled for laneways, local roads, and collectors. So through you, Mayor Nuttall, I was wondering what will be the situation for arterials?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Morales. Brett Graytrix, the author of the report, is actually virtually, so he can pop on and talk about arterial parking.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Morales. The arterial roads would be parking prohibited.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And the staff report here says local roads are going to be less wide. Appendix A. So I'm looking at it. You're going to have 6 plus 0.5 curbs, or just before the curb. So could you just give us a comparison to the existing standard from an 8-meter laneway, which will be the new standard going on, to what it is now?
You, Mayor Nettle, to Councillor Morales. The narrower road, the local street, went from an 8.5 meter asphalt platform to an 8 meter platform, if that's what you're referring to.
Yep.
The laneways are separate items.
Okay, so 0.5 meters less total. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then page 4, reading the alternative 1 here, ignoring the first line. This alternative is not recommended as it does not accommodate emergency vehicles, winter operations, waste collection, and cycling facilities. So essentially, alternative one is saying, like, let's ignore this whole report and just stick to the status quo. It does not accommodate emergency vehicles. How do we do it for the rest of the city? Because this report only speaks to the future roads and Hewitt-Salem, and it says here, with limited instances within the built boundary. So how does the rest of the city work?
So on the local roads themselves, the major difference, and I mentioned the 0.5 meters, which isn't a very major difference, but the big difference between the secondary plan area and the built boundary is the level of density of the homes. We have very narrow 4.5 meter townhomes, 5.5 meter townhomes, very narrow product. We have a lot more demand we're observing for on-street, which causes that issue where it's difficult with cars on both sides of the street for vehicles to navigate safely, not to mention the winter maintenance challenges and waste collection on top of that, and then further emergency services when they're trying to respond. So it makes it a much more difficult issue with that level of usage on street versus a typical subdivision street built in the 90s, 2000s, early 2010s, for example. Laneways, we really don't have laneways with some exceptions in the downtown. And then the collector streets, there's consistency as we're rolling out our road diets or road right sizing, as I like to call them, where we're restricting parking on both of those. So there's consistency there to support active transportation on both of those elements where we're taking restricting parking there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Gatrick. Excuse me. Thank you so much, Mr. Gatrix. Mayor Nettle, the reason I bring this up here is this was a big discussion we all had. Councilor Corser, I want to thank you for bringing kind of the attention to this as well, and a bunch of us. This is a good standard for what we have yet to build. Banning off-street parking before people buy their homes is also going to save lots of phone calls to those councilors in the future. They know what they're getting themselves into. This is the standard of it is on these roads, so if you don't like this, buy a laneway, buy a local street on that one side or look at alternatives. And it's just going to allow us to thin the roads, which is what we wanted. So this is somewhat tied to the report that got deferred at affordability. I won't touch those points yet, but I did want to speak to the specific questions I asked because the answers I got will set up questions for that report. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Riepma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just following up on those comments from Councilor Morales, and I know that we've had a couple of discussions about this. I just wanted to confirm that when you look at Appendix C and the other ones, on the collector roads, the bike lane shown here is still below the curb. But earlier we had another report that showed the bike lane above the curb, which is the sort of the new standard. So I just wanted to confirm that the location of the bicycle path here is the old standard, and it's actually moving to the new standard, which is above the curb. So just if you could just confirm that, then I'll be content.
For you, Mayor Nettle, to Councilor Riepma. Yes, that is the old standard currently in place, but the intent is to move to the new standard with a cycle track facility located behind the curb.
That's great. Thanks.
Councilor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nettle. Through you to staff. And the reason I'm asking this is obviously I have a new subdivision, Bear Creek Ridge, in my ward that sprouted up over the last couple of years, and parking has been an issue because it was the first subdivision where a lot of these no parking signs got put in, and then as a result got bagged. So with the information that I've been provided, a street like Andine Lane that has no driveways on one side would be considered a laneway because of the width of the road. Now, when these people purchased their homes, they had no idea about the parking restrictions that were going to be in place. is there a way that we can ensure that developers disclose this information to residents when they're purchasing their homes? So that way they're fully aware of where the lot that they've purchased is going to have either parking on one side or not, or no parking at all.
Through you, Mayor Nettle, to Councillor Harvey. Yes, we're looking at putting warning clauses on title and asking the developers to make sure that happens. We were expecting that would be communicated to them, but with this additional request, that should alleviate that concern.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Thank you, Mr. Greatrix. And we will move on to any other questions or comments. Seeing none, all those in favor of the report as printed, that carries. Just going to move back to my notes here. And I'll move on to DEV 044-23, which I believe is Deputy Mayor Thompson.
I'll put the motion on the floor as printed, and I have an amendment. That staff, I'm going to add a paragraph. That staff reestablish the policy of naming streets after elected members of council and automatically add the title and name, i.e. Councillor blank blank, of elected members as of this term of council, of Barrie City Council, and onwards to the street naming registry if they do not already have a park, bridge, or facility named after them. And I can speak to that.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. So this was something that used to occur, and we've actually run short on some names. So I just thought it was something, and I had discussed this at the previous term, and it just never come about. We had honored some local heroes in the naming, so we left it alone, but I just thought it was something we should bring back up. And I've started it as of now going forward, as you don't know where the cutoff should be. So I thought that it would be something that going forward, that this would be a policy that we could, honor the people who serve their community, and something that, they could be proud of. So that's kind of my amendment.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Councillor Kungle.
So I think Kungle Court's got a good ring to it, but honestly, I completely understand the intention. I do struggle to support it, only in that, for instance, I do see the rationale, and maybe I'll move it to staff. I believe this is a historical policy that it would only be staff and members of council that worked for the city of Barrie or served would be considered after they passed. And I understand the rationale, perhaps being if it comes from a place of learning from other municipalities, that there's always reputational risk on the table, and you can't control what someone does past service or how they exit an organization or whatnot. And so considering it's a point in time, I hope you may remember me more from, in the meantime, but I would say I really love the consideration. I would love to be tabling, recognizing, Deputy Mayor Barry Ward was an interest of mine to put on the table, but recognizing that policy did not permit it, I understand the rationale. So that's my personal experience, view of it, but if I may, I guess I'll ask a question of Ms. McAlpine. Can you speak to the history of how this policy came about and the rationale for why it exists to date?
Through Mayor Nuttall to Councillor Kungle, yes, the existing policy contains a provision that any naming that might occur for a member of council or a member of staff, if they were on the list, does not take place until after the individual is deceased. That policy was common in many municipalities when we reviewed the naming policy, and based on some less than positive experiences that they'd had after people had left their time serving either on council or staff, that perhaps the naming was no longer appropriate based on specific actions.
And if I may follow up, just to understand the intent too, knowing that there's the kind of the names list. So is there a practice now by which it has to come through council to add names, or does any point of that policy automatically trigger a consideration coming to council after someone has passed away that has been a member of staff or has been a member of council, or does it actually have to be triggered by a seating elected official to have that happen?
Through Mayor Nuttall to Councillor Kungle, if I recall the policy, it's been a while since it was written, all the names come through council for consideration. At one point, it was an automatic that names for members of council were added to the policy. However, I believe the requirement currently is that all of the names come before council for consideration.
So I guess my last question might be just a point of clarification to Deputy Mayor Thompson. Is it around just the process of getting them on the list but not automatically adding them to being able to be chosen while they're still living?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle. So it would be adding it to the list, and it would be the councillor at the time. It would be added to the registry, and obviously if there was something that, would keep a member off the list for, to the points Ms. McAlpine had made, would be understandably. But I hadn't really thought about the deceased part, and that's when, obviously you can't do anything wrong after you're deceased. that might be a totally different conversation. So, but so that I hadn't really thought of that, and I hope members that serve, whether they're around this table, are great citizens to our community, and most people who do sit here. Now, there's an exception to the rules, that's for sure. But so I hadn't really thought about that, and I think I would be okay, and I'll wait to hear the remaining members of council or general committee, speak. But I look around the table, and there's there's quite a few young people, and it might be a long wait for them to get names on streets in Barrie. So I'm comfortable with the members I serve with that I would put their names on the registry immediately.
So if I still have the floor, may I? I guess my last point is I can't support it as tabled as an amendment, but I'm not opposed to an amendment to the policy in the future if it means streamlining the process to say, there's a secondary list by which, we don't forget that these people served historically, but upon death, it would be automatically coming to council for consideration tied to this type of motion. But I don't support it around the possibility of a member that might be identified tied to the city's reputation that, in worst case scenario, can't uphold that. And we've got a different situation of discussion about why we should be taking down the name of a road.
Thank you, Councillor Kungle. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll just want to move an amendment to the amendment. So it reads as follows. I'm amending it, I'm not replacing it. That staff review the existing list of names for originality, appropriateness, and representation of our community and its residents. And then the other section is that staff enact a policy that any Barrie resident served in the Canadian Armed Forces and are killed in action, or served on a fire, paramedic, or police department and are killed in the line of duty have their last name added automatically to the street naming registry if they do not already have a park, bridge, or facility named after them. And I can speak to that.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. So an interesting situation happened. A police officer was killed in the line of duty, 2010. A letter was received by the mayor's office then on March 29th, 2010, informing this individual, informing his widow, who lives in Ward 9 and still does, saying, on behalf of City Council and the City of Barrie, I wish to convey my profound sympathy on the death of your husband and their name on Monday, March 1st, 2010, as a result of a tragic accident. City Council on Monday, March 8th, has requested staff to investigate opportunities to name a future street in honor of your husband. Your husband, with their name, was an upright and honest police officer with the highest integrity to law enforcement. Please accept our heartfelt condolences on your tragic loss. So why I'm bringing this up now is a friend of hers was helping clean the basement, found the letter. Now, she's obviously moved on, and this was obviously something she never wanted to bug the City of Barrie with on this letter. So I kind of looked at the policy, and then I found a lot of names in the policy, and I'm just going to go through some of them. So right now, already approved, and are Bessie, Antler, Grape, Gentle Fox, Nanny, Northwind, Nighthawk, Mountain View, Lake Pine, Lake Hill, English Mill, Taunton, Vanity.
Councillor, we get the point.
Yeah. So those are pre-approved, and if I got the phone call from that resident going, why are we naming those streets before that? So this specifically to the automatically or not, these are automatic. If you die on the line of duty, you're and it passes the check marks of EMS, you're in. Same thing with Canadian Forces. Right now, of about 140, 150 names we have on the list, only 7 are veterans, to my understanding. Out of those 7, about 4 of them are not actually from Barrie. They're enlisted in Barrie. They are actually from Belleville, from Toronto, from Midland. So I have an amendment later for Ward 10 Street, and I've already consulted with the councillor of a specific Barrie veteran. But I think we just need to look at all of this comprehensively, because personally speaking, I don't want to name a street Grape before we name it after a public servant or someone who died in the line of duty, period. Now, the reason I'm amending this as well is it actually goes off a quote you said, Mayor Nuttall. You celebrate the wins, you said it the other day. So I think the opportunity to celebrate public servants who have served while they're living, I think is actually important. There's something to be said about the fact that for the next 80 years, we might not be expanding roads out, we might be going up. There comes a point where you just actually don't build more roads. So I think it's important to support the Deputy Mayor's original amendment for the other reason that we already have streets named after councillors, former councillors, because the policy was in place. And I trust, as much as Deputy Mayor said, I also trust in them, even if I didn't serve with them, that things are going to be okay. And even then, even when someone is dead, it is possible to have that awkward conversation. As the fact with Toronto, Dundas, I believe London, Ontario, Plantation Street or Drive also has run into that issues. So the living death argument is not whatsoever, especially with social media now and reputation. I believe there's a road in the North End as well, tied to the British kind of monarchy that is under question lately in the news, and this is like 50 years later. So I feel comfortable with all of these tied together, all of these amendments together. And I want to make sure that we do it comprehensively and we get some good names of both public servants and veterans, as well as looking at the existing list. The reason I did the wording about appropriateness and reflecting the community is that there can also be some diversity representation because our community's changed.
Thank you. I agree with everything you said except British monarchy, because it's Canadian monarchy as well. Councillor Congo.
Thank you. Just 2 quick points through you. Well, I'll just through you, Mayor Nuttall, but in general, I guess from a process, I can't support the First Amendment. I see that as a very separate piece, so I would encourage maybe consideration to separate them out. Otherwise, I'll just automatically be voting no to the whole collective, but I do like the framing of the motion brought forward by Councillor Morales. So I'd like to clarify if that is actually a separate rather than an amendment to an amendment, if it's a separate item.
So that was an amendment to an amendment that was put forward. So unless the councillor wants to withdraw it, we'll vote on that.
I do not.
He does not want to, so we'll vote on that.
Okay.
Okay.
And then lastly, I mean, good conversation, but overall, there's 2 process pieces. I think it would be good for us to circle back on whether that's an appropriate committee for maybe an update or presentation on the policy, which is 1, the naming and getting names on the list, 2 is the decision making of, and I believe in the past that has come forward with the respective councillor, the developer, and it's a different conversation. But we do have quite a lot of historical referenced names there around sport heritage as an example. And so I think it would be good to understand the priority of which names go forward to that particular councillor where development is happening and the developer at hand, which seems, in my understanding, to be where the decision gets chosen.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments around the table? Well, having been canceled like 3 or 4 times already, I know what's going to happen with my name. But I think overall, folks, for me, I'm going to support it. I understand the argument with regards to after one is deceased. I also understand what Councilor Morales has said there, and this is really up to council to decide. I'm not passionate on either side. One caveat I would highlight is there's always been a tradition with public servants, right, to do some sort of recognition. And there are public servants at other levels of government who don't serve on council but still go and represent the city. And, maybe that was a little bit more true when Barrie was one riding provincially and federally and less true today. But, I think for next week we should, if this passes, we should really think about not just this table, but maybe there's other avenues, as Councilor Morales has brought other levels up, and other folks who have served the community, and specifically those who've died serving the community. I think that if I was to do an estimation of who I wanted to name a street after, or a building after, or a park after, I'd want my name last, and those individuals who sacrificed their lives first. So these are things I think that, to Councillor Kungal's point, that we should consider going forward. That said, on the amendment to the amendment, are there any other questions or comments? I'll call the vote. All those in favor on the amendment to the amendment. And that carries. On the amendment as amended.
Recorded vote, please.
There's no recorded vote. This is general committee.
Thank you.
So on the amendment as amended, are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries. On the main motion, Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Now that that's taken care of, I have another amendment moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hamilton, that Section 1A, quote, Street 4-Woodsdale Crescent, quote, be replaced with, quote, Street 4 Dainty Crescent, end quote. And I can speak to that. Perfect. So I will speak to that. Sorry, I was just making sure everybody got the link here. So in line with everything I just said, I'm not going to repeat it. One of the veterans that was from Barrie, his name, and I'm getting this off veterans.gc.ca, his name is Corporal John William Dainty. He died in June 6, 1944, at the age of 26. He was with the Army, and there is really good information on the veterans website, not only about kind of a bit of his family life, but also, unfortunately, the reporting information that not only confirmed his death, but also confirmed that he was from Barrie. So I touched base with the ward councillor, who said, move it myself, and we triple checked with planning staff, and we then triple checked with the developer to make sure that Woodsdale wasn't something important to them, and she went absolutely no, like go for it. So in line with everything I said, we're also taking care of that, because that's a street that's happening now.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Morales, and Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to the mover of the motion, or the amendment. Actually, I just want to commend you on the work. In the original amendment with that officer and the widow that you reached out to, you've corrected a wrong. They were promised, and that's the ultimate sacrifice. And, to Mayor Nuttall's point, yeah, there's a long list of people that can go in front of me, and these are the people that I agree with. So I just want to commend you on that work, and your research and stuff.
If I can respond to that very quick. Mayor Nuttall, I want to thank your office. They actually printed, I said for tomorrow, but they printed the municipal naming policy application form. I contacted the family, and there's actually some baseball diamonds that went up in Ward 9 that the family talked about it together, and they think it would be great for something sports related in his memory. So he's not going to do the road, and I'm going to fill this application and honor that promise that the mayor's office made 13 years ago.
Thank you, Councilor Morales. Councilor Corser.
Just a thought, as we are having this discussion around the table, is there any way that we can populate a list of people who have served and have not been recognized in that sense, that we can act on in a very quick fashion as we are developing so many new areas in the city?
Yeah, I think that was actually part of the last amendment, which we just approved, would be that those names be brought forward that have not received recognition so that they can be immediately added to where they need to, where they can be added.
Okay, do we have that list available at this point? Or? Okay.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, we don't know what we don't know. So right now there's only 7 names, 4 of them aren't from Barrie. So we're gonna, staff has the ability to, with this amendment, to do the research, review it, reach out to whoever, and then come back with a populated list. I'm sure there's not a unfortunately, I'm sure there's not a shortage of names.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm playing a little bit of a slow-mo catch-up on this. Sorry about that. Yep, carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Now that we're having this discussion, it got me thinking, because obviously I have a lot of new streets that are going to be coming into the Salem area, and I think it's quite fitting that the main road going through there is Veterans Drive. So through you to staff, at what process when it comes to the street naming for the New Salem's lands is staff at, or is there an opportunity to incorporate exactly what Councillor Corser had just spoken about by playing catch up and having a lot of veterans names in this new subdivision that's going to be built off of Veterans Drive?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey, there's definitely some opportunities. Obviously, there are staff reports through either draft plans, sometimes zoning bylaws that bring the street names forward, or in some cases, like this evening, where a one-off street needs to be named. So council does definitely get involved, and I can certainly take that offline with you in terms of where street naming is with respect to things in Ward 7.
Yeah, great, thank you. I just think it'd be fitting, especially with the main arterial road being Veterans Drive. Thank you.
Councillor Rietman.
Mr. Mayor, the Vice Chair of Heritage Barrie, Craig Froese, is an expert in that very area, and he has lists of all the veterans that come from Barrie and surrounding areas, actually, who died in the 2 World Wars. So I can make that introduction with our planning staff, and I think that would be a pretty quick thing to do.
Absolutely, thank you for that offer. And I think I saw Councillor Kungle. I see your hand as well. No, sorry. Okay, perfect. Any other questions or comments around the table? Seeing none on the amendment to the amended motion, all those in favor? And it carries. On the main motion, any comments or questions or amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries. We'll now move on to the next item that was held, which is the DEV 049-23. Grove and Duckworth Street cycling. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. To staff, so basically this report, if people want to follow, I'm on page 2, below the picture, so section 6, page 2, below the picture says, for new city-led capital road projects, staff are including separated cycling facilities where possible and contextually appropriate. Typical projects are road widening or reconstruction capital projects. So two things. I think Councilor Reba asked a really good question earlier. That was tidied up on the previous one we accepted, so that's good. Could staff elaborate on where possible and contextually appropriate? And the reason I ask is those words make me happy, but they're a little bit generic in the sense of I want contextually appropriate and feasible to be defined.
Mayor Nuttall, I will let Brett Greatrix answer the question.
You seem to be just having a little bit of a problem there. Any Mr. Greatrix? Oh, there we go.
There we go. Sorry, I was muted. Through you, Mayor Nettle, to Councilor Morales. We included that language specifically, not necessarily to manage expectations. We're fully embracing the separated facilities, but there may be instances where there is a conflict that is insurmountable in terms of overcoming to achieve a desired facility type. So we wanted to just leave that open a little bit, but obviously in those instances, we would want to communicate with council the situation and outline options to potentially remedy those situations. But again, fully on board with the separated cycling facilities. That's where the industry is today, and that's where we're moving forward with. In terms of contextually appropriate, I highlighted in the report that it is still important to move forward with the road dive program in conjunction with our physical capital works to build out the network. As much as we'd like to move towards a totally physically separated network, there's a fairly large affordability aspect that comes into play with that. So I think just being cognizant of that, I wanted to present that balanced framework within the report.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Gatrick. I'm going to go to section 9 here. It says, same page for people following, on collector streets constructed within new developments in the secondary plan, so Ward 7, 9, 10, a little bit of 8 possibly in the future, buffered bicycle lanes are being implemented based on legacy standards. However, for collector streets, where development applications haven't yet been submitted, cycles tracks, meaning separate away from the road, are the standard and will be implemented as per the memo that I deferred. So my question is this. Why is there a bit of a gap? And maybe this is to be corrected based on the question Councilor Rima asked, but I want the uttermost clarity because this is a memo to be received. And I called out a memo where there was no action taken before, so I'm going to own it myself. And if the answer is not what I hope for it to be, I'm going to move a motion on the memo in order to move away from legacy standards and essentially do it right whenever we can. Not on local roads, not on laneways, that is a significant cost, but on the appropriate collector roads, arterials, and intensification corridors.
Through you, Mayor Nettle, to Councilor Morales, Section 9, that was highlighting the fact that retroactively applying these standards to developments that are already through draft approval, where they're working on engineering designs, would impose a significant burden to that community. So as staff, recognizing the importance of providing stability for those folks and the necessary clarity and process, we felt that the best approach would be on applying the standard for developments that we haven't seen applications come before us yet.
So as a follow-up, Mr. Greatrix, the reason all this kind of, I essentially kind of brought to the attention in March is Rain Song, so a giant farm, essentially farmland on Mapleview and Ward 9, and Rain Song, they were an application for a major subdivision. This took them years. They got to the finish line, and it was brought to my attention by Mr. Duhamel from Jones Consulting, representing the file, meaning the file had already been received of the wide roads that didn't really need to be that wide. So my experience, my personal experience is he made it clear that the point of no return is detailed engineering. So you can have zoning, and if they don't do anything with it, they can always, because again, the right-of-way is the right-of-way, you can kind of move this. It's once they do spend the money on detailed engineering, that's when they start figuring out the roads, and at that point, it's the point of no return. So I guess why I'm saying this is I take an issue that there's the point of no return on Section 9 is legacy standards for within new developments. I think that that point of no return is, it shouldn't be not submitted. It should be for new development applications that have already entered site plan, detailed site plan. So that is the point where we can still do this. And Mr. Duhamel confirmed back in March that his client confirmed that they were happy to wait for us to figure this out, hence why this went away for study and came back. And I haven't heard that they're changed their mind otherwise. So do you, Mr. Graytrix, as a question, do you take any issue to changing the sentiment of 9 to cease implementing legacy standards for applications already submitted and only focus essentially on ones that haven't entered a detailed site plan, so we can use the new cycle track standard and not miss the opportunity?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Morales, I'm going to jump in here just to, so as I understand it, we did have some conversations with the development community about this very topic and the memo that was deferred earlier, saying something very similar. You know, if you're not building, if you're not done, like, you know, let's look at having these better standards. We received significant feedback that a lot of work happens even before things are submitted to the municipality, and that even between draft approval and doing their detailed engineering, there would be significant costs and delays incurred even at that point. So, and just furthermore to the actual recommendation, so bullet 9 is really just a bullet point. There's no staff recommendation about kind of grandfathering. That's, I think, probably a different topic. But at this point, the feedback that we've heard preliminarily from the development community is that it would have an impact.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Banfield. My final question, if there's a developer who is different than that majority that has concerns, I guess, about changing it, if there's a developer that is willing to go to a standard because they believe in it, because they'll get more money, because people buying that subdivision will buy in a safer subdivision, is there flexibility to give that flexibility? Like I'll talk about a specific scenario. If there's a subdivision in Ward 9, the developer's willing to change it, they have a conversation with me, I'm encouraging them to change it if appropriate. Could that be accommodated in a simple manner?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Morales, our only concern there would be if there was an issue of connectivity and consistency with the network. So I think we would definitely be open to that. And if it was going to be a 100-meter section, I made up numbers, but if we were talking about something that would be really silly and worse for implementation, obviously we wouldn't, but we would be open to those conversations for sure.
Perfect. I'll end it there, Mayor Nuttall. The point about connectivity were the bulk of my questions for the other one, which I'll save for that time. But that suffices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor. Councillor Riepma.
Just one comment, Mr. Mayor, and that is that I am kind of saddened that we didn't get the separated bike lanes on Grove and Duckworth, but I do understand that, and going back and reinventing a contract is very expensive, and it has a whole lot of other complications attached to it. I would just like to, Councillor Morales has spoken about the greenfield development scenario, but in Ward 1 and other parts of the city where we have existing streets, and if we are going to do the environmental assessment for rebuilding those streets, I think that's the time that we really need to implement the separated bike lanes. So I think it's in the future when we do environmental assessments for road replacements, I'm certainly hoping that staff will use the new standard for the cycleways for those streets. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries.
Separate report.
A separate report has been requested by Councillor Morales. Madam Clerk, has that been noted?
Yes, Mayor Nuttall.
Thank you. And we'll move on to DEV 050-23, Geddes Crescent. Councillor Corser.
Just pulling that up. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to, I guess, Ms. Banfield on the hot spot tonight. I just, as
Sorry,
previous.
Sorry, could you just put the item on the floor
Oh,
before we
my
ask questions?
apologies.
Yes.
I'm skipping right over.
No problem.
I'd like to put the item on the floor as written.
Perfect.
All right, sorry. Here we go. Ms. Banfield, as the conversation earlier, I'm going to bring back up the hot topic of parking. There was a requested staff report about restricting parking on Geddes Crescent, and I've had multiple correspondence from residents concerned about the decision on where to implement that parking, and I'm just wondering if you could speak to the decisions that the staff recommendation, how you came to those conclusions.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Corser, of course. This report began with an inquiry about restricting parking, on-street parking. There was some concerns about navigation and the court and so on and so forth. So that's what staff did. And the side that was picked, the north side, it just has limited opportunity, keeping in mind that from every driveway you have to be 1.5 meters, and along with the curve and the distance from the intersection. So staff felt that there was more parking available by putting the restriction on the north side and allowing the parking on the south side. So it was still to allow parking, but to allow it on one side for all the reasons that the investigation was requested in the first place.
And just a follow-up question, if I may. On page 2, there is a little table that has option A, option B, and there seems to be an overwhelming response from reached out to residents in the neighborhood, and there seems to be an overwhelming response. 76% of respondents said they did not want any traffic changes on that street. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Corser. Through the process, it is to notify residents of the proposed parking restrictions. Okay. It's not unusual to see a response like this. In many, many cases, people, notwithstanding what initiated the investigation in the first place, this is a very standard response when we look at removing parking availability.
Yeah, I will support staff's at this time, the recommendation. I just wanted to get a little more clarity on the choice of the sides of the street, and I do understand that the restrictions, there would be the blind spots on the corner, and of course, as you mentioned, the space between the driveways, absolutely. And that was, I guess that's all the questions that I had for right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Corser. Any other questions or comments with regards to DEV 050-23 Geddes Crescent? Seeing none, all those in favor, and it carries. We'll now move on to DEV 052-23 Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator. That was held by Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll be quick on this. I just want to thank staff who have worked on this file. I want to thank Council for endorsing this a couple of weeks ago. And I want to thank all of Council. Amy, Councillor Corser, I always go to you for your emphasis on pedestrianism, like making things easier for pedestrians. Sorry, I'm slurring my words. But Councillor Corser, the fact that you bring that pedestrianism to the forefront is why we kind of almost went from that redesign, having a park that has 2 driveways around it and makes it really not safe, to taking away that driveway because there's already one like 50 meters down the road, and now it's a safer thing for families. So these are things that I usually wouldn't have thought of. You kind of bring it to attention. So I just wanted to share the good news on that design, and also that there's 2 general market residential towers at 18 and 26 stories, also on Yonge Street.
Wonderful. Sorry, Councillor, could you put the motion on the floor as well?
Like Councillor Corser, I forgot. So yes, I'll put it on the floor and refer to comments said before.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor, and it carries as well. We have one more item held, which is confidential LGL 003-23, confidential proposed disposition of land matter Bayview Drive. But before that, I think we'll carry out the rest of the public portion of the meeting before we go in camera. So there's no reports of officers of the corporation or items for discussion. Information items, we're now at inquiries, and we'll ask Deputy Mayor Thompson when he's back. So are there any inquiries around the table this evening? Councillor Corser, or sorry, Councillor Kungle.
No, we blend. Yeah, and I'm gonna table it, and I mean no putting anyone in particular in the spot, but I did have two questions, but I guess I'll start with the first one with Ms. Cook, and that's just in reflection of this week being focused on truth and reconciliation. I was wondering about if there's any budget still for council around education, if there could be a consideration of how we can continue to take steps forward. I think one of the commissioner's reports, I think it's number 57, talks about education to public servants. We're doing, I think, really great work around what we're even bringing forward to the public this week, starting, I believe, tomorrow. I am seeing different levels of boards of governance and elected officials taking opportunities to put themselves in spaces for continuous learning and conversation. And I would love to see if that has a budget to support something either this calendar year or next calendar year.
Ms. Cook?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle. There is some funding available within the council budget. Council has a strategic priorities reserve, so we could use some of that towards funding for courses like this. It would just need to be brought forward as a motion to take funding out of that account.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll leave it there to kind of note my interest in that, and maybe see if members of council have ideas about different courses. There's some I'm aware of right now that different boards of governors, like the health unit, are actually actively participating in. So I'll share that forward and then see if there's support, or I'll bring it forward and then see if there's interest publicly around supporting that and if we need a budget to do so. I have my second question, but I'm seeing Councillor Harris. Is it a comment on that?
Is it okay to?
Yeah.
It's a great initiative. And maybe most of you are aware, the University of Alberta has a great course. It's free, Indigenous Canada. So I've taken it. It's 12 modules. So for those of you who are interested and eager, it's right there and free, and I recommend it highly. Thank you.
Thank you. My intention on that question is really just, I think, to put this council forward around being able to either identify what we're continuing to do or how we're being supported in ongoing education and that commitment to some of the pieces around actions towards the commission report. My second question...
Councillor, just while you're on that, I think it would probably be a good time to also mention we met with members, I believe the chairperson of the Anti-Racism Task Force. One of the missing one of the blind spots for them right now is they don't have a member of the Indigenous community on the task force, and they are looking for that. So I thought I would just jump in because it's kind of aligning with where you're going in your questions.
Thank you. And I'm going to frame this as a question because I'm getting questions, and I want to frame it in a position that completely respects all members of council and the mayor's office. I want to, I'm asking this in the framing of the protest that happened at City Hall last Wednesday. But out of that, there's been a lot of questions about what is council's position on support in general to our LGBTQ community. And while I know I've taken my own position online to share that, sometimes when we don't speak, I would also say silence can speak for us. And if the public is asking not about maybe that particular situation and different opinions at that situation, but overall, as those types of situations unfold into ongoing conversations with different community groups, I guess I would ask, is there a position or statement that our LGBTQ community could expect that does re-emphasize our embracing of them as important members of the community that we support? And I don't know if that comes through the mayor's office and that type of statement, or if it comes through the communications department.
Ms. Harris?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to the councillor. Thanks for your question. It's common practice for most corporate communications departments. We're really operationally focused, and we wouldn't take a position in matters such as this. We would leave this up to elected officials unless we had council direction to do otherwise. So that's how, from a corporate communications perspective, we've approached this and other matters such as this.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. I appreciate that. So I'll just leave it as a comment of encouragement. I think for those that are comfortable in doing so, I'm finding it to be an important point in time for us to be communicating how we view our LGBT community and what does inclusive communities look like. And regardless of how different protests were framed, that impacts individuals that are important members of our community. And so I was comfortable making a statement. I'm hoping other members might, but then I guess I would just ask for consideration if the mayor's office might do so as well.
Well, I don't know that the mayor's office would make a statement. If you're asking a question to me, then I'm certainly open to asking me that question. Is this question for me? Okay. Thank you for the question. So first of all, I don't think we should miss an opportunity ever to say that that hate has no place in this community, and thank you for your comments today and certainly going forward. I also don't think we should wait for a protest. You know, we've had the opportunity this year to have many gatherings here at City Hall, whether it's in the mayor's office or through flag raisings out in the community to, in some cases, celebrate diversity, in other cases to mourn tragic deaths. And it's across a spectrum of different folks, and we need to continue that. You know, the mayor's office is able to facilitate all of these. I think that if you went through flag raisings year by year over the past decade, you'd probably find that I'm at more than ever before, and to the point where I had a complaint about it last week, and I'm not making that up. The reality is, going forward, we'll continue to do that. We'll celebrate, we'll recognize, and we'll take every opportunity to make sure everyone feels included in this community. Are there any other questions by members of council? Seeing none, we'll move to announcements. Any announcements?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Nuttall. I have a couple of announcements. One, a quick reminder to Ward 3 that we're holding October 15th with Clean Up Barrie to do a garbage pickup in the area. The location and timing will be identified. I'm hoping to share something shortly. If you're interested in helping out, just contact me. A second announcement, I had the opportunity to be at Hooray for Outdoor Play with Empower Simcoe. Their building is on Ferris Lane in Ward 3. And I just want to congratulate Claudine, Mike, Esther, Michelle, and Jamie on putting a spotlight on the work that they're doing around inclusive communities. They've just launched a huge fundraising campaign for an outdoor playground that will, I think, be another nice spotlight in our city around inclusive playgrounds, and that at Painswick and that at St. Vincent Park. And so I would encourage you to connect with Empower Simcoe and the great work that they're doing there. And I think, lastly, I just want to say congratulations to city staff. It's always a beautiful spotlight when you are receiving awards. So I believe out of 3 initiatives, 5 awards were identified to Invest Barrie and the Invest Barrie team. But do want to point people in that direction that while we talk about economic development, there really has been some beautiful spotlights about how we're leading in this space around city staff. So thank you for that.
Any other announcements? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, and through you, just wanted to let Ward 10 residents know that the Ward 10 Advisory Committee did meet again last week for a quarterly meeting. If you're interested in what the discussion was, the meeting minutes and highlights will be posted on the Ward 10 Facebook page and also my website.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Any other announcements? Before I get into the formal announcements, I do want to highlight this part of the meeting. We have the opportunity in inquiries and announcements each and every week to highlight issues that are important to us, and we should never hold back. Everybody should be able to step up to this mic and speak what they believe to be true. They're representing an area, but also you're representing yourself when you're here as well. So I would encourage each individual to take that on at the time when they see best fit. I would also point out that we have items for discussion and we have direct motions that facilitate opinions, beliefs, action. Sometimes they're statements to raise awareness. Sometimes they can change the very fabric of the city physically, roads, bridges, all those types of things. So we do have the opportunity, folks, when we see fit, to bring things forward to this table and make sure they're heard. And I wouldn't want anyone to feel like they are unable to do that. It's a very empowering thing, not just for the individuals here, not just for the people you represent as ward councillors, but to different demographics right across our community. And it is something that I hope that members of council will practice, because I certainly do. When I see something that I believe in, I bring it forth, and will continue to do that unabashedly. So thank you for listening to that perhaps a little bit, because I think it is important that we do have the opportunities and we should take them. And you wouldn't want to be in a position where you didn't take the opportunity and then you've got to look back a week later. I would like to proclaim October 7th to 14th as Ontario Cadets Week to honor and recognize the outstanding young Canadians whose unique personal and collective development through the cadet programs helps them be successful in Canadian society, as well as recognize those who support the program directly and indirectly. The City is launching the 2024 Budget Engagement Campaign on October 20th. Taxpayers are encouraged to provide feedback through the online survey on how they would like their tax dollars to be spent ahead of the City Council's 2024 budget deliberations. To learn more and share your feedback, please visit buildingbarrie.ca/2024 budget. The City of Barrie is now participating in Culture Days, a Canada-wide celebration of arts and culture taking place until October 15th. This year's programming features an interactive 3-week schedule of free, accessible, and behind-the-scenes experiences offered in person, online, and through self-guided exploration. For more information, please visit barrie.ca/Culture Days. Nominations for the 2023 Barrie Heritage Awards are open until October 30th. The annual Barrie Heritage Awards recognize property owners, individuals, and businesses that have made strides in fostering local identity through heritage preservation and awareness. For more information, visit barrie.ca/heritage. As part of the Duckworth Street Improvement Project, the intersection of Grove Street and Duckworth Street is now fully closed until October 20th. Detours are in place, access for residents within the closure area will be maintained, and Barrie Transit Routes 6 and 7 will be on detour. To learn more about the project, visit barrie.ca/roadwork. The City is accepting fall applications from eligible local organizations. 2023 Recreation and Sport Community Grant. The grant provides funding to enhance access to recreation and sport opportunities in the city. Applications will be accepted until the 6th of October 2023. Barrie Fire and Emergency Services calling on all residents to test their smoke alarms on September the 28th for Ontario's Test Your Smoke Alarm Day. That is tomorrow. As part of the day, Barrie Fire and Emergency Service will be holding 2 contests for residents, including the following. Like, share, or comment on Barrie's Fire Tests Your Smoke Alarm Day social media post for a chance to win pop-up retro block party for your neighborhood. And fill out the contest form that you have tested your smoke alarm at home. If enough residents complete the form, Barrie Fire will host an extra hot summer night event next summer, which are very popular. For more safety tips or further information, please visit barrie.ca/fire safety. The City of Barrie has been recognized, as Councillor Kungle has just shared, for 5 different awards, 2 gold and 3 silver. And I would just ask CAO Prowse, I know our Director of Economic Development is unable to be with us this evening, but if you could extend on behalf of Barrie City Council and the entire city, congratulations to Stephanie and her team, and tell her that the new standard is that we expect this every year.
I will pass it along, Mayor Nuttall.
Thank you. The City of Barrie is recognizing National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in collaboration with Mamawe Widukawin Primary Care Team of the Barrie and Area Native Advisory Circle, the Barrie Native Friendship Center, Red Quills, and the Barrie Public Library. The Barrie community will have opportunities to learn and reflect by attending open house and family activities in the City Hall Rotunda on September the 29th, 1 to 5 p.m., a flag raising and awareness walk at City Hall Courtyard on September 29th at 4 p.m., and the Sacred Fire and Sharing Circle at the Spirit Catcher on September 30th at 6 a.m. Further information can be found at barrie.ca/NDTR. The Community Safety Committee and City Council meetings will be held on October 4th, 2023. We'll deal with the circulation list. Are there any comments regarding the circulation list dated September 20th, 2023? Councillor Corser.
Okay, so bear with me because this is the first time I've actually pulled something off the circulation list for discussion. So it would be, I apologize. Correspondence from the Municipality of Grey Highlands dated June 21st, 2023 concerning school bus arm cameras. Do I put that on the table or I just speak to it? Oh, I'd like to send, is it possible to send that letter to our Community Safety Committee to have a discussion of creating our own?
So you'd like to refer it to the Community Safety
Yes,
Committee? Perfect.
please.
You can absolutely do that. All those in favor? And it's approved. Are there any other items on the 20th of September?
Yes. Also, for the correspondence that we received from the Barrie Homelessness and Housing Justice Network, dated September 27th, 2023, concerning the panhandling. I'm wondering if this initiative, the value of moving this initiative forward due to the some local associations and organizations are not willing to participate.
I think that if you're looking for a debate on the matter or for questions to be answered,
Yeah.
I think that you'd probably want to refer that to a committee.
Okay.
So that is...
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, if I get this correct, that you're identifying the letter, but my understanding is there was no ask for them to participate, if I'm correct. So it's really a moot point. We didn't ask them to participate.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, if I can, to, I guess, Deputy Mayor Thompson and Councillor Corser. There was no ask of this organization to participate. It was not part of Council's direction, but I would remind Council that Council did give direction, and to reconsider that, you would be premature to reconsider your own direction, I think, inside 6 months. So you'd have to at least wait for that period of time. But this organization has not been approached to receive funding directly or indirectly from the city. So we did receive their correspondence, and we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Are there any other items from September 20th? Seeing none, September 27th. Seeing none, General Committee will now move into closed session to discuss a confidential staff report held during the consent agenda concerning the confidential proposed disposition of land matter, Bayview Drive. Can I have a motion to move into closed session? Moved by Councillor Kungle and seconded by Deputy Mayor Thompson, and we'll now excuse ourselves to the Sir Robert Barrie room to move into closed session. Thank you.